I believe in any sort of consistent mathematical theory. There's corresponding mathematical objects out there.
Okay. What's your position in abortion, I guess?
I'm pro-choice.
Okay. Outside of religion, I am too.
But I mean, I could also defend pro-life if you want me to.
Sure. I'll just
Do you
defend
want to do
pro-choice.
that?
I'll just
Okay.
defend pro-choice. Yes, so what's
Okay,
wrong with
that's
ethical
fine.
egoism? Individual.
So here's the sort of argument I'll give.
Wait,
The
did you? I
reason
said what's wrong with individual ethical egoism?
ethical egoism,
Yes, pro-choice is what
probably just not
allows
going to
you.
match.
Yeah, so pro-choice. Hold on. Pro-choice gives you the most freedom when it comes to acting upon your self-interest. So it allows for the most moral choices.
Well, you might care about other people besides your own self-interest. I mean,
I don't
obviously,
have
my
to care about other people's self-interest to be an ethical egoist. I'm talking about individual ethical egoism, not universal ethical egoism. I believe that ethical egoism is what's consistent with society's views. We morally consider our self-interests at the pinnacle.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, the straightforward objection I would have to this sort of wait, are we agreeing on this proposition or not? I'm confused.
I'm asking for argument against ethical egoism, specifically individual ethical egoism, if it's consistent with society, which it is. So sure, we're debating this, Sakazuki.
So,
Pro-choice versus pro-life.
well, I don't know how the conclusion follows, but from
Wait, that's fine. You don't
I
have
would
to
give
know. I'm
a
sure there's a
positive
lot that you don't
argument.
know.
I would just give a positive argument for the prima facie wrongness of abortion.
Wait, that's fine. You can give it, but like I said, I want to clarify. I don't really care if you know about how the conclusion follows. There's probably a lot of shit that you don't know. That's very fundamental and basic. But go ahead and give the argument.
Okay, so do you want me to formalize it or can I just say
You
it in
could just
essence?
lay it out premise by premise.
Okay. Do you want me to type it out in chat?
No, you can say it.
Okay, so premise one will be the reason why it's prima facie wrong to kill adult human beings is because you're depriving them of a future value. And here, a future value is supposed to.
Wait, hold on. So look. Most people, like I said, it is consistent with society. Most people do value the future value when it comes to a person.
I didn't finish the argument though. The argument's
Wait,
going
that's
to
fine.
entail.
It doesn't matter. So look, how does this contradict at all or entail that ethical egoism is specifically inconsistent?
That we're not debating over whether ethical
Wait,
egoism
my
is
position.
consistent, and
Hold on.
even
My
if it's
argument for
consistent,
pro-choice. My argument for pro-choice is correlative to ethical egoism. So I ask for an objection towards
look,
that.
if an entailment. Okay, so I want to explain two things. The debate is obviously not over whether ethical egoism is consistent, because clearly there can be consistent moral
No,
theories.
the debate is over. The debate is over pro-choice, and the argument
Can I
is
speak?
correlated to ethical egoism.
I
Yeah, I'll
let
let
you
you speak
finish.
when you don't say something wrong. Yeah, you have to let me. You have to let me finish. That's the difference.
Can I have a moderator? You know.
We can have a moderator when we clarify the topic. So the topic is pro-choice versus pro-life, but the argument is correlated to ethical egoism. So I'm asking for an objection towards its consistency.
I need time to speak. You can't just keep interrupting me.
Yes, correct. You'll get time to speak whenever you don't misrepresent what's being said. I've already said this 5 times.
So, do y'all want a moderator?
Yes, I want a moderator. He just keeps on
we can have a
interrupting.
moderator after. We can have a moderator after we've clarified the topic.
Okay, just let me know when your topic's clarified then.
So, okay, the first thing is it's obviously the debate isn't over whether ethical egoism is consistent.
I already clarified that. You don't have to repeat that. I agree. It isn't over ethical egoism's consistency. It's over pro-choice versus pro-life.
Okay, so if your ethical egoism or your view here is going to entail that abortion isn't prima facie morally wrong, then it's going to contradict the conclusion I'm going to give.
Wait, that's fine. I don't give a fuck. So, do you have an objection towards ethical egoism?
So you realize. Okay, you can't.
There's a lot that I realize. You obviously don't realize that you're looking back currently. Do you have an objection towards ethical egoism?
The objection is going to be the argument I give. If you accept all the premises in this argument, then it's going to follow that your view is false.
So, what's premise one? Go ahead.
I tried to give the argument earlier, and then you just cut me off.
Yes, and I wanted to clarify the topic. We were clarifying the topic. I was agreeing that the debate isn't over ethical egoism specifically, but it's over abortion, and the argument I'm giving is correlative to ethical egoism. Now that that's clarified, you can lay out the argument.
Okay, I'll spell it out. Okay, premise one is going to be the reason why it's prima facie wrong to kill adult human beings because it deprives them of a future value. And here, future value is meant.
Why does that matter?
I'm Joe. I can't. Can you let me finish the
Yes,
argument?
I don't-
Do you want me to?
No,
do you want me to moderate now?
Wait,
Or-
Sakazuki,
Yes, I want
hold
you to
on. So
moderate.
look, hold on, Sakazuki. Julian, I asked you to lay out the argument premise by premise so I can interject whenever I disagree with a premise. Idiot.
You
Am I lagging, Sakazuki?
look.
No, you're
I
fine.
didn't even
If
clarify
I'm
the
not
terms that I
lagging,
was
why is he
using.
failing to understand very basic shit? So the reason why people usually ask you to lay out an argument premise by premise is so they can interject whenever they either one, don't understand a premise so you can clarify, or two, they have an objection towards a premise, retard.
Calm down. So, what do
I'm
you
calm
disagree
down.
with about premise one?
So listen, I'm asking you why it's prima facie wrong due to us valuing, or my bad, due to us imposing on the future value of a person.
Okay, it's the best abductive case for why death is wrong. When we consider the vast majority of cases in which someone dies,
Yeah,
and
when you
what's
say
really
death
bad,
is wrong, do you mean to say it's wrong objectively? Is that what you're saying, or are you
no.
saying it's wrong relative to something? What do you mean by wrong?
I'm just speaking about normal ethics here. I don't mean to make any metaethical
Yeah, so
commitment.
I'm asking, what do you mean by wrong here? You said death is wrong. I agree. It's in my self-interest to not see a person or
I
witness a
really
person
meant to
die.
say.
Look, Julian. I'm agreeing. It's in my self-interest to not witness a person dying. I have also value. It's in my self-interest to value the life of a human, for example. However, I don't believe at all that it has to be in the value of every single person. It doesn't have to be in the self-interest of every single person.
Look, first of all, maybe I didn't even mean to say death is wrong. I meant to say death is bad. Now,
Yeah. So what does that mean as well? I take bad and wrong to mean the same thing.
well,
At least
I
in the
don't really
context of
care.
morality.
I think we can agree upon certain things that are bad and certain things that are good, and we can have this debate productively.
Yeah, yes, but when we so we can agree to certain things being bad, but what we mean by bad, at least relative to a system, is distinct. So you can mean bad as in it corresponds to reality that this is some separate objective fact that is incorrect. What I mean by bad is relative to my self-interest. I do not want to witness someone dying.
Look,
It's not in my self-interest to do this.
I don't think we need to go on to a debate about what is goodness and what is badness to have a
Wait,
productive
that's fine.
debate
I don't
on
have to
normative
think that.
ethics.
But if you're using these terms, I need a very clear understanding of what you mean. Obviously,
I think the best way.
I understand that you
you
think that, retard. Can you give something that's actually corresponding?
look. The thing is, I think I can give you a decent enough of what I mean by
Oh my
bad
god.
by giving you cases.
Yes, but
Generally,
I can agree, Julian. I can agree on the cases of something being bad. Like, for example, do you agree that rape is wrong?
sure, yeah.
Yes, I also agree with that. But does that tell me at all? Is that at all informative of what it means to be wrong? Whether or not wrong
I
is
don't think you
objective,
need to
whether or
know.
not it's relative to a system?
Look, I don't need to give you a full account of
I never
wrongness to
said you
have a
needed to
productive
do it.
debate in
You don't need
normative
to do
ethics.
anything. You don't need to be here. I don't need to be here. You don't need to do anything.
Can you just engage with the conversation? It's actually getting
I
really
am.
frustrating.
I'm trying to engage in the conversation, but you're not clarifying
I
basic
don't
and
need to give you
relevant
a
terms.
full account of wrongness for me to.
You don't need to give me a
my view
full
here.
account. You need to give me some type of account that is relevant towards what you're saying. You don't even need to do it. It's just preferable for progression.
Look, okay, by wrongness, I mean it's generally going to cause people less pleasure. It might violate some of their rights. People have, the right to autonomy,
Okay,
right
okay,
to
perfect,
interest,
perfect.
these
Is it
sort
in
of
the
things.
self-interest of a person to feel pleasure, usually?
Yup.
Okay, continue. That's all I need.
Okay, so generally when I consider cases in which it's bad that people died, it's going to be because they had a wide future ahead of them. So, for example, I feel less bad when
By the
a
way, Sakazuki, you can't
98-year-old
moderate
dies.
now.
Wait, can I finish my explanation? So, I feel significantly less bad when a
I
98-year-old
know
dies.
flames. People are being biased. I don't know why. But that's fine. You can feel bad.
Julian, finish what you're saying. I'm gonna start moderating.
Yeah, I mean,
I got.
the point is I feel less bad when a 98-year-old dies compared to a 13-year-old because the 13-year-old had a big future ahead of them, a lot of experiences to care about. The 98-year-old did not. So this is my point. My point is that, well, the harm of death is based on the future experiences one might have. And that's the best explanation for why death is a bad thing here.
Infinity.
So look, there's two things here. One, can you please mute him, Ms. Sakazuki? Yeah, so there's two things here. One, when you say that's the best explanation for why death is bad, hello, do you hear me? The best explanation as to why death is bad, if we accept my view, the same way as you're presupposing that I accept your view, is because it goes against and imposes on the self-interest of an individual. Most people do not want to witness a person dying. Most people do not want to hear a person dying. Most people do not want a family member dying. Secondly, You can value the life of that 8-year-old. You can preserve the life of that 8-year-old. However, me, for example, I would rather have an 8-year-old die over my grandma who I've known my entire life. Am I cutting out suckers?
Yep.
Okay, wait, don't unmute him. I'm about to refresh.
Is he back? Bro, did his Wi-Fi crash? Not again, bro. But no, I think he's good. Infinity, I invited you up.
No, it didn't crash. I told you I was refreshing. So when did I start cutting out?
I mean, like, most of the stuff you were saying was pretty audible. It'd just be like, you'd cut in and out a little bit. Yeah.
So sure. So I was saying, yes, it can be your best explanation as to why death is bad. However, my reason as to why most people would think death is bad is because it imposes on their self-interest. So it's not correlated to them valuing the future experiences that that child or person might possess, but instead it's correlated to it not being in the self-interest of that individual to witness a person dying because of their fear of blood, their disinterest of blood, or not hearing about a person dying, not wanting a person in their family to die. Secondly, I do not care about what you value when it comes to the 8-year-old over an old senior citizen or something. In my opinion, and in my view, because it seems like you're accepting and presupposing your view, so I'm just going to presuppose mine. Under my view, I would rather preserve the life of my grandma when it's my grandma cherishing and living the rest of her life over a random 8-year-old. So if I were to see an 8-year-old on the news dying, comparatively to me seeing my grandma on the news dying, I would not feel as much sadness at all. Like, I don't care about that. So do you have an actual argument, or are you just going to keep on talking about your shitty views that people like you and Haram hold? I don't care about retards holding retarded views.
So there's three things I want to address fully before we go on. First, the first of your concerns was that I was presupposing my view. Giving an abductive case for my view is not presupposing my view. You're supposed to believe my view on the basis of the abductive case I'm giving you. The abductive case is, this is the best explanation for why death is bad. Now, you brought up the case in which you would value your family member, your grandma, over a random 8-year-old. Well, obviously this is going to just devolve into your preferences for caring about your family member. And it's not going to be a good moral judgment as to know whether death is more harmful for a random 88-year-old than for a random 13-year-old, for example. And the last sort of argument you gave is that it's against their self-interest. Well, here's my sort of response. I mean, it surely is probably against the 88-year-old self-interest and the 13-year-old self-interest to die. But this is not going to explain why death is much more harmful to the 13-year-old than to the 88-year-old. It would seem it's both against their self-interest to die, but what explains why it's much more harmful for a 13-year-old to die than for an 88-year-old to die? The only good way to explain this seems to be to appeal to their future experiences that we care about. That's sort of my response. You can go.
Yes, I was giving the example of a family member. But when you're talking about an abducted case, you're just talking about the best explanatory power towards the conclusion. What's in question is whether or not your explanation is the best. Even if I were to hypothetically give a retarded explanation, that does not actually account for the conclusion I'm trying to go for, while comparatively you give a good explanation seemingly, that does still not justify your point or give an abductive case. Now, when we're talking about an 8-year-old and the preservation of a grandma, and you say one is more harmful, etc., obviously harmful is going to be relative. If you're talking about future experience, since the 8-year-old has experienced less than the grandma, it will be more harmful relative to how much experiences they're going to cope up, because the 90-year-old or 80-year-old already has experienced way more than the 8-year-old, and potentially the 90-year-old is going to live less than the 8-year-old if we were to say they die of natural causes such as age. The same as when I say killing the 80-year-old is going to be more harmful than killing the 8-year-old relative to how much they can benefit society, because this 80-year-old is a very rich 80-year-old. It's going to be specific to a scenario. This 80-year-old is very rich and she donates to charity. When this 8-year-old potentially in the future grows up to be of the same age, this 8-year-old does not donate to charity. He does not give as much to the community as this 8-year-old. So, if this grandma or grandpa dies 1 year before they're going to donate $1 billion or $1 million to a charity, yes, it would be way more harmful to society, relative to society, when it comes to this grandma or grandparent's death comparatively to this 8-year-old, because this 8-year-old is not imposing money to any charity. The same as relative to experiences they're going to cope up, this 8-year-old dying is much more harmful than this grandma dying. So when you say this is wrong, I agree it's wrong in respect to self-interest. That's the best explanation. The best explanation for why death is wrong is because it imposes on the self-interest of each individual. That's abductive. You haven't given an abductive case, you're just giving some explanation that you specifically grant. Not everyone grants that. Someone like Kagi doesn't want to see the death of his friend. It's not in his self-interest. If it's not in his self-interest and it imposes on his self-interest, it's wrong. What's wrong with that? Go ahead. Don't rant.
So, I have a few things to address. The first thing I want to address is it's more harmful relative to experiences or some other things. This kind of concern is weird. Maybe it would help to clarify what I mean by harm. I take a comparative counterfactual account of harm, and it's going to say roughly this. An event is harmful to an individual if and only if that individual would have been better off had that event not occurred. So for example, somebody stole $10 from me, they harmed me because I would have been better off if they hadn't stole $10 from me. That's sort of what I'm meaning by harm here. And it's kind of weird to say something is harmful relative to somebody's experiences. I'm just caring about harm as a means of takes away something from someone that we care about and, might give some moral implications based on that. And the second thing I wanted to kind of address here is that you would say that killing the 88-year-old is more harmful to the 88-year-old than like an 8-year-old because that 88-year-old might have donated money to society. We're talking about the average case. We're not talking about, okay, there might be some exceptional cases where an 88-year-old, may have this robust moral value and may do something fantastic with their last years of life. When I'm drawing these general moral implications, I'm talking about the average case. Bringing in, outliers isn't doing much to make your case here. And your last sort of objection is that I didn't really give an abductive case because people sort of disagree on kind of cases I'm given. Well, I think it's kind of weird to say people would disagree that an 88-year-old is generally, less harmed by death than a 13-year-old. I think that's a thing like the vast majority of people would agree on and would probably take as evidence in favor of my view. Okay, I'm done.
Like, there's no way y'all nigga think this. God, nigga, shit was right.
One sec. Can I say so? Can I get another owner up here to moderate? Because I actually have to go out. I told my friends I'll go out.
Go ahead, but just let me see real quick. Y'all can get whoever y'all want to moderate. I don't care.
Yo, Flames, come up. Just stick moderate, alright? Just mute whoever's not talking.
So ass, bro. So look, I'm going to grant, and of course I agree, that if people don't listen to things that others say, like my opponent Julian, then maybe they'll agree with his points. Yes, they would value the life of an 8-year-old and say it's more harmful to kill that 8-year-old comparatively to a grandma who is 88 or 80 years old if they don't listen to the points. The reason why I'm bringing up reflective or respective harm is because you're talking about harm in respect to the potential they have when it comes to experience. Now, obviously, if we talk about a specific scenario, a hyper-specific scenario, when the topic of conversation is the future experience, then yes, we will value the future of experience of an 8-year-old, maybe you, or maybe me. Sometimes maybe me. It depends on who the 8-year-old is. Maybe me or you individually would value the future experience of an 8-year-old in comparison and over the future of experience of an 80-year-old due to them having less future experience. But in respect to a hyper-specific scenario that I proposed, which is the potential to donate to charity over the 8-year-old, no, I would not value the life what preserved the life of that 8-year-old. When you say it's an outlier, you cannot, whether or not it's an outlier, there's no justification when we're talking about the life of other people unless you bring up some type of consensus or some type of statistics, which I know you're not going to do. You cannot find any statistics at all that talk about what you're talking about currently. You can't determine whether or not it's an outlier, and that's not good for you. If there's a lack of determination while you're on the affirmative saying that we should value this 8-year-old's life over the preservation of this grandmother or this grandpa, then you need to show up some type of statistics as to why within this scenario that would be the case. Now, this shit is so boring, bro. It's weird to say someone is, yes, Goon's correct, I sound defeated because this nigga is so ass. On everything I love, this nigga Shimmer was hyping this dude up, bro. This shit is so ass, bro. Bro. Anyways, the reason why...
Is it my turn to talk?
No, it isn't your turn to talk. That's why I'm still talking, retard. When you say it's weird to say something is harmful relative to another thing, you brought up it being harmful, obviously in respect to your definition. If you bring up scenario and then say, well, my definition of harmful is X and Y and Z, obviously in that scenario it will be harmful. If I say in a scenario where an apple is a Y, in every scenario where I see an apple, under my view, that would be a Y, which is completely fine. Whether or not we should accept its consistency or it being an abductive case that's more abductive than my case is a different topic of conversation. Give your point.
Okay, so there's a few things I want to address. And so when you say that it's not a hyper-specific scenario that you gave, that this 88-year-old could donate billions of dollars to society, well, in this case, you are talking about an outlier. You obviously know the average 88-year-old isn't going to donate billions of dollars to society. And you're saying I have no empirics to support this? I think me and the rest of the audience can clearly tell that the average 88-year-old isn't going to donate $80 billion to society. That's just not going to happen. And this is statistically likely. So what you're saying here is I have no empirics to show that the case you gave was a severe outlier.
Wait, so maybe you're retarded. Wait, Flames, can you mute him real quick? He's misrepresenting a point that's very important. So look, I'll repeat it again because you have the ears of an old person that we're talking about currently. I never at all said it was likely or it wasn't something that's an outlier when it comes to an 88-year-old donating billions of dollars to charity. What I said was there's a lack of determination when it comes to a person donating to charity. It doesn't have to be $1 billion. It can be, for example, $500K. It can be $10K. It can be $5K. It can be $100. Within this scenario, although it is a hyper-specific scenario, I'm using that to compare the scenario that you gave, which is very hyper-specific. That's why it's relative to whatever we're talking about. In that context, we were talking about future experience. In the context I'm talking about, we're talking about potential to give to society, potential to give to the youth, potential to give to the poor. Retard. That's why when we're talking about it's more harmful to kill this person, it's always relative. There's no such thing as a general harmful thing. It's always relative to something. It's harmful to kill a kid because their mother is going to be very sad. So it's harmful to kill a kid relative to their mother. It's not harmful to kill a kid relative to the person who murdered the kid because the murderer might not care. It would not be harmful to the mental state of the person, not harmful to the person's environment, not harmful to the person's economics at all. Nothing. So it's always relative when you use the phrase, it's harmful. Retard. This is basic shit. Don't say you're from the philocom and not know basic shit, retard.
So, the first thing is you're saying that there's no concept of harm that's not relative to something. I mean, this is sort of strange to say as I just outlined above my sort of account of harm. The account of harm I take, I'll repeat it once again, is the comparative counterfactual account of harm. And this roughly says this, I'll repeat it again. Somebody is harmed by an event E, if and only if they would have been better off had the event not occurred. And I gave the example that if someone stole $10 from me, I was harmed because I'm, worse off now. And it's very strange you also say something like, there's no such thing as a general harm. I mean, can we not agree that SA is generally harmful to the SA victim, right? I mean, we obviously can agree that there's some things that are generally harmful, and we don't always have to rely on particular cases, but we can sort of make these generalized things. Now, I need more elaboration using my account, how harm is always relative to something. Harm is, indexed to the person who's being harmed, but besides that, you don't have to index the harm to, something else besides your sort of account of well-being, the things you care about. If someone's worse off, they have lower levels of well-being because of your action, then, you can say they were harmed based on, whatever you think constitutes well-being. Okay, go on. I'm done with speaking.
Oh my god, this nigga is so fucking terrible. So look, my position currently is individual ethical egoism. What did he say? Someone would be harmed if what they lost, they would have been better off. That's the point, Julian. How we determine someone being better off is if it's in the self-interest for them to lose that $10, if it's in the self-interest for them to be a victim, if it's in their self-interest to get beat up, etc. What's my position? What's immoral is dependent on the self-interest of the individual. What's moral is dependent on the self-interest of the individual. It being harmful is correlative to it being immoral. That's what determines it being immoral and harmful. Yes, so that's all with the basis of self-interest. I agree. Now, when it comes to generalized harmability, when you're talking about being a victim, no. Unironically, so many people have rape kings. Hold on, let me get my bitch real quick. Let me, come on, shut up on me. All these niggas talk. You just want to say it on my nigga. All these niggas, got it. These niggas don't give a fuck. This is Alright, let's see. Where's the screenshot at? Yes, I'm mixing my yes, bro. She has one. Look at chat. So many people have a rape king. So no, although it's very unlikely for someone to have a rape king or have being victimized as a king, it's not general when it comes to it being harmful, because a lot of people, specific people, disagree with it being harmful. Idiots, it's not harmful to the person's self-interest. So yes, I believe that when something is harmful, it's determined by the self-interest of an individual. I sent the screenshot of someone having a rape king, which is my bitch. Go ahead.
So, your point is just quite ridiculous. Saying that tons of people have rape kings is not saying that, raping someone isn't going to be generally harmful to them. First of all, the people who have rape kings probably, might want, to involve in consensual non-consent and not be actually raped. So that's the first thing you want to consider. And secondly, we can believe that the vast majority of people who are raped are very traumatized by it, and it's generally not a good thing to do to people. So you bring up a couple of exceptions in no way debunks the point that generally rape is going to significantly harm the victim. And the next thing I wanted to address is your sort of account that, well, I think wrongness is going to be indexed to someone's, self-interest. So, if it's, in my self-interest to, hurt other people, obviously I can't do that, right? So, the balance of self-interest, yes, I care about my interests, but I care about my interests so long as it's not affecting other people's interests. When my interests start to affect other people's interests and violate their rights and violate the things they want, then I have to consider, okay, is the actions that I'm doing harmful to others? It's obviously wrong to act only on my self-interest and not consider the interest of other people around me. And that's my objection to your claim overall. You can speak now.
First, I need you to repeat the first thing you said. Secondly, the generality was talking about some type of objective, my independent law. Am I lagging, Flames? Hello? It shows that my voice activity is cutting in and out. Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so when I'm talking about generality, I clarified before that I'm talking about some my independent objective law correlative to wrongness and harmfulness. So obviously I'm not talking about generality in the sense where there's 5 people over 3 people, or this is conventional and normal. No, I'm talking about a my independent law correlated to moral wrongness. Another thing is, when you're saying you care about your self-interest up to the point where it doesn't affect other people, then that would just mean it's in your self-interest to not impose on the will of others. It's in your self-interest to not do harm to other people, which is completely fine, but Paradox chill, which is completely fine, but that doesn't defeat anything. All you're saying underlyingly is that it's in your self-interest to not impose on the free will of other people. It's in your self-interest to not impose on the mental state of other people, etc. There's nothing wrong with that, but that doesn't defeat anything at all. So repeat the first point, then we can go on now.
Hey, yo, shit, Paradox.
So, the first thing I wanted to address, you were talking about these moral mind independent laws. Now, I mean, these are very controversial statements. It's very controversial to say morality is objective or subjective. But for the sake of this conversation, I want to set points like these aside. I don't think applied ethics debate should be, prohibited by, meta-ethical restrictions. Now, I will address your other point is, so if you're forwarding this view, egoism that says like, okay, it might be in your interest to respect other people's self-interest and, we care about people's interest in total, then, I mean, it's not so clear how you're deriving pro-choice conclusions from this. So I don't think, in any sense, this argument you're giving is incompatible with the sort of argument I'm forwarding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the rest of my argument and then you can engage with that. So premise 1 was saying that the reasons why it's wrong to end an adult human being's life is because it deprives them of a valuable future. And, well, it might be in someone's self-interest that they sort of care about their future, and they might think that death is wrong for the same reasons, even under your view. And the second premise is that the fetus has this sort of future that I think we should care about, and therefore it's wrong to abort the fetus. So I mean, I'm interested to seeing how your argument sort of leads to pro-choice conclusions and is incompatible with my argument. Okay, you can speak.
So one, it seems he's failed to track. I asked him to repeat the first point that he made during his point of speaking. The second time he didn't do so. I'm just going to deem it irrelevant to the debate. Secondly, we're still on premise 1. I don't care to jump to the premises because you understand you have no defense for premise 1. Thirdly, holy shit, the reason why it's mostly compatible with pro-life and it's mostly compatible with pro-choice is because my position is that ethical egoism is consistent with society. Ethical egoism in this, at least in this context, is the belief that what's ethical and what's moral is what fits the self-interest of the individual. So it's okay to act upon your self-interest. That would be moral. And what's not moral is what doesn't fit the self-interest of the individual. What allows you to act upon your self-interest freely? Pro-choice. Because unlike pro-circumstance and pro-life, there is a lack of limitations to what you're able to do. If you have the self-interest to preserve the life of a fetus, you're able to do that with pro-choice. If you have the self-interest to not preserve the life of a fetus, you have the ability to do that with pro-choice. If abortion is not abolished. If you want to at least have the desire or thought process of being able to make a decision between preserving the life and not preserving the life, you're able to do that with pro-choice. With pro-life, there's restrictions. You can only act upon the self-interest of preserving the life. You don't get a choice to act upon the self-interest of not preserving the life. With pro-circumstance, it's relative to the scenario that you get a choice, meaning that in some scenarios you don't get a choice, which would follow that there's restrictions with pro-circumstance and pro-life, while comparatively there aren't restrictions with pro-choice, meaning pro-choice is the best position for ethical egoism. It's the most consistent because since what's moral is what fits the self-interest of the individual, and what's moral is to act upon that self-interest. Pro-choice gives you the most range to act upon your self-interest, therefore the most range and most compatibility with doing what's moral, retard.
Okay, so you kind of lay out your view on morality is based on someone's self-interest and my view about the future like ours arguments as two incompatible views. And this was never addressed, but I don't think our views are incompatible at all. I think you can hold to a view that you're claiming that, well, what's moral is things that align with our self-interest, and what's immoral are things that don't align with our self-interest. Meanwhile, holding to future like ours. You might think that it's in our self-interest to, care about the fetus and think that, well, care about the fetus's future, and I heard no rebuttal to this. And I might have a problem with your view independently because we sort of think that these actions that are not in our self-interest are moral actions. For example, we might think that ending your life for the sake of your children, well, that's clearly not in your self-interest, but you might value the self-interest of others so much that you think ending your life is the right moral choice to make. Would anybody say that a mother ending her life for her children is an immoral choice to make because it's out of line with her self-interest? No. I think that this is sort of a backwards view, and you're not looking at morality correctly here. The self-interest don't seem to be doing the explanatory work here. What seems to be the explanatory work is we care about certain people's well-being, and, if our actions promote well-being, we say those are good actions, and if our actions don't promote well-being, we don't say those are good actions. Now, just to clarify the point I made, is the first point, I think the first point and the most devastating point to your view is, I don't think your view and my view are incompatible, so you're not really responding to my argument. And the second point of contention is, I think you're looking at morality kind of backwards, and you leave no room for actions that are not in one's self-interest, but obviously we'd say are moral, like a mother sacrificing their life for their children. Okay, I'm done.
Clearly you believe I'm looking at morality incorrectly or backwards. It's just you saying that. You already said that 80 times. Obviously, if your view is opposing to mine, you would say I'm looking at morality incorrectly because this is a morality obviously. Another thing is the reason why most people, if not all people, would say that society is bad or suicide is bad and she doesn't want to witness the suicide of another person is because it's not in their self-interest to witness the suicide of another person. So literally everything, your first point, your second point, your third point, can all be reduced back to individual ethical egoism. We do not want to witness at all. It's not in our self-interest to witness someone committing suicide. It's not in our self-interest to witness someone being victimized, whether it's murder, by rape, etc. We don't want to witness it because it's not in our self-interest. Everything you're saying is reducible to the individual self-interest. Now, it might be the consensus self-interest, but it's still reflective of the individual self-interest. So when you say that I'm looking at morality backwards, that's just you saying that. That's obviously the point of contention. You're not adding or saying anything informative.
Okay, so there's two things I want to address here. The first thing is that my hypothetical was not about suicide being a bad thing. It was, in fact, in this case, suicide is a good thing, and it's against the person's self-interest. We would never say it's immoral for a mother to end their life for the sake of her children, even if it is not in her own self-interest, but it's in the children's self-interest. That was the point. The point is that something can be not in our self-interest and clearly the moral thing to do. The second point I made is, please address the point I made earlier about I don't think our views are incompatible with each other. I think your view is consistent with my view. You can hold that it's in your self-interest to care about the fetus and the fetus's future, and therefore think abortion is morally impermissible. If you agree to all my premises, you agree to the conclusion, and I don't think our arguments are contradicting each other. And I think this is the most devastating blow to your view. I mean, both of them are, but this one even more.
Bringing up the point about compatibility doesn't do. I agree that my point at some parts is compatible with yours. We're talking about what leads towards the most compatibility. Pro-life is compatible with individual ethical egoism because it gives you the free range to act upon the preservation of life, but it has a limitation and restriction when it comes to acting upon your lack of motivation to care about the preservation of life. While pro-choice allows you to have a lack of motivation to care about the preservation of life, as well as the motivation to care about the preservation of life. It even gets you that calm decision to make between the two. While pro-life doesn't allow you to make that decision and act upon your self-interest, therefore allowing you to do what's moral, allowing you to do what you ought to do, allowing you to do what's okay. Pro-choice allows that. Pro-circumstance and pro-life doesn't. For the first point, even in a scenario where it imposes on her self-interest, okay, you can say it imposes on her self-interest. Does that denounce the consistency with ethical egoism or pro-choice? It doesn't. It imposes on her self-interest. A lot of people don't have the self-interest to witness this committing suicide. Within the future, does not have the self-interest to live without a mother. None of this defeats anything. You're just reducing all your points down to self-interest, but you're not saying you're doing it because you know it will make you look bad. You have no defense for the claim. You're just going back to your view, which is presupposed. Nobody's looking at morality incorrectly. Your choices here are either one, to give a reductio towards my position, or explain the inconsistency, because I'm the one laying out a consistency with pro-choice, specifically ethical egoism. You've yet to do both criterias. All you're doing is ranting about your position, which doesn't defeat anything currently because you've yet to get any type of motivation. Am I cutting out, Flames?
No.
Okay. You've yet to give any motivation for premise one. So go ahead. Or would you like to conclude?
No, I have a lot to say.
Of course.
I just want to say I like your profile picture, Flame. But okay, let me go on to the argument. So, there's sort of 5 things I want to address. And the first thing is like the most incompatible. This is like you said that. Well, we're looking for the most compatibility here. I don't know what this means. My point was that I don't think our 2 arguments are incompatible, and this is a problem for you because you're saying that if I hold to your view, the pro-life conclusion is going to be false. But that's not what your argument is demonstrating. You haven't demonstrated how your view and my view are incompatible. Secondly, I wanted to point out that, well, the case I gave about the mother, ending her own life for the sake of her children, is incompatible with your view to say that thing is moral. Now, we might care about the children's self-interest, but that's not what your view is claiming. Your view is not claiming that, well, we care about all people's self-interest and we should promote everybody's self-interest. Your claim is that what's moral for me are doing things within my self-interest. So, I can't do something that's moral for the sake of other people's self-interest that's not in my self-interest. So yes, your view is incompatible with a mother, morally ending her life for the sake of her children. And I think that's problematic for your view. And you asked me to explain the inconsistency of my view with your view. That's on you. I gave the positive argument. You said your moral compass was in conflict with what the argument I was giving. But I'm claiming it's not, so you have to show me the inconsistency. The burden of proof is on you. And lastly, you asked me to motivate my future like ours argument. I gave the argument. What more is needed to motivate the conclusion? If you disagree with the premises, please spell out how you have a clear disagreement, because nothing you said is completely, even though your moral compass is kind of wrong, it's not even really in contention with the sort of argument I'm giving. So, my time is up.
The burden of proof is on you. What the fuck? Anyway. So all you said, all you did was rant. You didn't give an argument currently. You're saying, you're just repeating yourself. When you're talking about a lack of compatibility, one, you have the burden of proof. I laid out the consistency. You have yet to justify why it's inconsistent. You even agreed that your burden when going into this debate was to give a contradiction towards the argument, which you're attempting to do currently but failing badly. Hello, Flames, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So when you say my view is incompatible with the mother killing herself for the preservation of life of her fetuses, no, it isn't at all. I don't know what type of demon you are, but a lot of people care about the life of their future children, the life of their children, the life of their husband, the life of their wife, the life of their dogs, more than they care about their own life. So yes, you can have the self-interest to value the future of your children and the future of your husband, the future of your pets way more than yours, and you can commit suicide or kill yourself so you can preserve the life of the people that you care about. There's no incompatibility with ethical egoism. There's just a rant on your end, which is fine. You can rant, but not to me, please. So she has a self-interest to protect her fetuses. To act upon her self-interest, she must kill herself for her fetuses. She morally considers the future of her fetuses more than her life. Therefore, her acting upon her self-interest to kill herself and preserve the life of her fetus is morally okay. It's completely fine. You saying that it is not fine or it is incompatible does not mean it is incompatible. That's just a claim that you're making. You can make claims. I'm making claims currently. There's no burden of proof on me. The burden of proof is solely on you. That's the reason why you're giving this shitty premise by premise argument to justify the inconsistency or contradiction in my view. You said when going into this debate, this argument was supposed to be a contradiction, therefore reductio towards my view. I've yet to see the contradiction, maybe because there's a lack of justification for your premise, your first premise specifically, but please give it. Another thing is, I am not saying, and this is the last time, I'm not saying it's incompatible with your view. Pro-choice is incompatible with pro-life. Our positions are incompatible. Now, the justification as to why pro-choice is accepted by me, only part of it is incompatible with your view. Another part is compatible, which I've explained multiple times. So it's compatible with your view in a sense where I have the self-interest to preserve the life of a fetus. Pro-life is the preservation of the life of a fetus. That's completely fine. I'm acting upon my self-interest because I'm preserving the life of a fetus. Now, what if there's a scenario where a mother does not have the self-interest to preserve the life of a fetus due to her being raped? She cannot make and act upon that self-interest due to the restrictions that comes alongside pro-life. However, she can act upon the self-interest of preserving the fetus or not preserving due to the situation of abortion not being abolished. This is a clear distinction and explanation towards the incompatibility with your view. So, pro-choice gives more range when it comes to doing moral acts. Pro-life does not give us much range as pro-choice. Pro-life doesn't give us much range as pro-circumstance when it comes to moral acts. Therefore, pro-choice is consistent with society, which is my entire position. It's consistent with what society wants.
Okay, well, Loki, I gotta go, so you guys gotta get another moderator.
We can just end it here. I think we're repeating ourselves.
After I give my response, we can just end the debate and we'll do closing
No,
statements after I give mine.
if you say something new, then I'm gonna respond. But go ahead.
Okay, so there's a few things I want to address. So the first sort of thing you said is that it's the burden on me to give the contradiction with our views. No, I gave a positive argument that ended with the conclusion that it is prima facie morally wrong.
And you haven't justified premise one. That's the point.
Can you mute him? It's my time to talk. Just please.
He's not moderating anymore.
Okay.
No, I can't. I don't wanna go right now.
Okay, so I'm just going to finish this really quickly and then you can. So, I gave a positive argument for the prima facie wrongness of abortion. It's on your view to show that this sort of argument does not work, and you have not done that. The second thing is, it's kind of hard to see how it could ever be in my self-interest to end my own existence. It really seems like when I'm ending my own existence, it's for the self-interest of, other people and not me, in the scenario I gave. So if a mother ends their existence for the sake of their children, well, it's really hard to say that it's really in somebody's self-interest to end their life. And I would question what you even mean by self-interest at that point. And the last thing you said was very confusing to me. It was confusing in the sense that you're saying, well, there's no contradiction between our views. Okay, if there's no contradiction within our views, then I really don't really have to engage or show that your self-interest account is false for you to accept my conclusion. Now, if we can agree that generally people have the self-interest to not end other people's lives, not deprive people of their future value, then we can still hold our argument and say that in the majority of cases, somebody having an abortion will be wrong because it's against their self-interest to, take away somebody's future experiences and somebody else's life. So, in this way, I'm sort of reconciling my pro-life view with your sort of reasoning you're doing here. And, okay, that's all I have to say.
This dude can't talk for shit. I never once said it was compatible. I said a part of it was compatible. You have some type of hearing problem. If you have a hearing problem and you only hear a part of the argument, then it might seem compatible completely, but obviously it isn't compatible if you were listening to the argument. Another thing is, if it's in the self-interest, I don't see at all why it matters what you see. I don't care about what you see. I don't care about what you value. You might value your own self-interest or your own existence over anybody else's existence, over your mother's, etc. I don't care. Maybe it's because you don't have children yet. You don't know the feeling of what it's like to have a child. You know the feeling of what it's like to have a pet. I don't care about what you see. But a lot of people would value the life of the fetus they brought into existence over themselves. A lot of people would die for their children. A lot of people would die for their mother. A lot of people would die for their brothers and sisters. I don't care about what you would do. It is not relevant to me at all. It's not relevant towards the position. Be that one outlier that is selfish and values your own existence over everybody else around you. Now, that objection I just gave is correlated to the point about the mother. Just because you don't see how one person has the self-interest of valuing another person's self-interest doesn't mean it isn't true. Yes, a person can commit suicide because it saves the life of someone that she holds dear. It can be in her self-interest to love other people acting or witness other people acting upon their self-interest. It can be in her self-interest to love seeing other people act upon their self-interest freely. If the baby dies, she's not able to witness other people acting upon their self-interest freely. But before death, guess what? Before death, as in before she kills herself, she is able to think of the baby having the ability to act upon her self-interest, which will calm her. It refreshes her knowing that the life that she brought into existence is going to be able to act upon her self-interest or his self-interest freely. While if the baby dies, while the mother lives, she'll have to go throughout her entire life knowing that she killed that baby and that that baby was not going to be at all able to act upon their own self-interest because their self-interest hasn't even developed. So, just because you don't see how another person can value another thing doesn't mean that they don't value this other thing. Doesn't mean it's unlikely they'll value this. It just means you're retarded for proposing this fucking view. I don't care about what you value. Now, you haven't explained why it isn't your burden. All you're saying is it isn't your burden, it isn't your burden, it isn't your burden. You came into this point by being on the positive, saying there was a contradiction in my view. I asked why. You laid out the argument premise by premise. We're talking about premise one. You failed to justify premise one because you're retarded and ass. So would you like to conclude?
Yeah, I'll do concluding remarks here. I have a closing statement. Do you want me to give my closing statement, or
So by closing statement, do you mean you're going to add something?
No, closing statement.
By closing statement, do you mean you're going to summarize what has been argued by both, or even individually you within the?
Yeah, we each give closing statements. You give your closing remarks. I give my closing remarks.
That doesn't answer the question.
What's your question?
The question was, by closing statement, do you mean you're going to add something new as a response so that the debate can end, or two?
No.
Do you mean you're going to summarize what was argued individually by both of us?
No, each of us give closing statements. I'll summarize my end. You can summarize your end.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so a few things I want to address. So the debate started off by Infinity giving some very questionable points about us not being able to draw general moral conclusions. He bring up a case that, well, some people have a rape king, so we can't say SA is generally wrong. Obviously, we can say this. And his response to why we would, not say an 88-year-old's death is more harmful than an 11-year-old's death is that there's some exceptions, but bringing up these exceptionary cases does not disprove the point that generally we can make some moral judgments that are like, okay, abortion is generally morally impermissible, death is generally more harmful to a 13-year-old than an 88-year-old, etc. And he goes on this kind of funny moral argument that it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what my views are, this doesn't defend my point. Well, I'm just going to ask you, audience, are you convinced by the argument I gave? Are you convinced that death is generally bad because it takes away someone's future experiences, and the fetus seems to have these experiences we care about, so abortion is wrong for these sorts of reasons? Now, Infinity brought up this funny point that, okay, maybe the mother values the children so much it's actually in her self-interest to end her life. But again, I really don't know what self-interest even means here. Like, ending my life seems in no way caring about my self-interest. It seems that I put the self-interest of these children so highly that, mine don't really matter anymore. I just care for these children so much that I weigh their self-interest so much that it's above mine. And I think this radically reflects our intuitions around what self-interest is, and in this case specifically. Infinity kept on asking me, show a contradiction, show a contradiction. What kind of contradiction am I showing? It's his job to show that the argument he gave from we care about people's self-interest, what's morally right is, what's in someone's self-interest for that particular person. It's his job to show me how this argument is incompatible with my argument. And he just didn't tell me why his argument's incompatible with my argument. So he didn't rest his case. He didn't draw the conclusion he wanted to draw, which is abortion is morally permissible. He didn't end up showing my argument was false. He didn't show how there was a contradiction between our two arguments. And again, I said that's a devastating blow on his position. Okay, that's all I have to say. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yo, I ain't gonna lie, this nigga retarded. Hey, hold on. Let me see who's on stage real quick. Hey, can you let Trix out real quick, Flames?
Yeah, hold on.
Dead ass just gonna say one thing. A nigga can watch the debate if they want. Hey, Trix, request out real quick. Or click Sue. You can let click Sue up. You can let Trix up.
Neither of them are like requesting though.
Alright, click Sue or Trix, request out real quick.
Click Sue, yeah.
Hey.
What do you need me to do?
Hey, click Sue real quick. So, look, all you have to do is answer this question real quick. Do you think it's absurd that a mother would value the life of the people that she brought into existence over her own? You don't even have to answer whether or not you would do it, but do you think it's absurd that a mother would value the life of her fetuses or children?
I don't totally know.
Okay, do you think it's absurd that, for example, if there was a criminal coming up to you and you had 3 of your children, that a mother or a father would jump in the way of the bullet for their children?
No.
Okay, do you think it's absurd that if a car was coming on the streets and the children were in the street, that a father would risk his life by getting in the way of the car and pushing?
Oh no, I don't think that's absurd.
Okay.
My father's done that for me before. Okay.
Yo, that's all I want. Thanks.
You realize you don't continue the debate after
I don't care.
closing
I was just asking. What'd you say?
You realize you're not supposed to continue the debate after closing statements are given.
Whatever you just said, anyway.